Wow, big question. At the age of 7, sent to this institution, they indoctrinated me. You are not worthy, you are not beautiful. We are going to make you suffer, and it's your fault. So an institution and a group of people that were meant to protect me, meant to educate me, the opposite happened. Perhaps their humanity is something that we're seriously losing.
What is your process in this and kind of finding yourself almost and finding that beauty in yourself? What has it taught you about collective humanity as a society, as a global population?
My beauty. I don't think I ever will see it.
Your normal projects where you go, all over the place in some of the most remote places in the world, do you feel like that's a form of therapy?
But I am beginning to start feeling again. I'm obsessed with that creative journey.
Do you not think that we have a responsibility to be integral, to be honest, to try and promote a good message?
The only thing that matters is
Mr. Jimmy Nelson, thank you so
morning.
much for joining me today on the Mood Podcast. It's a privilege to be sat across the other side of the world having a conversation with you.
Also, perhaps we should admit to your audience, this is the second time. This is a sort of we sat opposite each other a few days ago, and I wasn't in the best of moods. And as I've just apologized to you, and I think it's actually a good beginning, I wasn't actually listening to any of your questions, and I was giving sort of pre-recorded answers in my my excuse was time difference. But to be honest, I wasn't actually quite in the zone. So here we are again. So perhaps this is going to be even a richer experience as we get to know each other.
I'm sure
even
it is.
Better.
I think that's probably a good point to kind of segue into how that might apply in terms of our own mindset, being comfortable in our own skin, and how that translates onto the paper, onto the screen, or in our cases through the camera. Is that something you think about a lot? Got to be in the right headspace before you even start the day and think about picking up a camera.
Good question. I think the way I described to you a few minutes ago before we started recording was that I didn't give you my all. I didn't give you my best. As I said, I didn't listen to your questions. I didn't focus on the original answers that I was aspiring to give. I think that goes the same for making a picture. If you don't, if you're not obsessive about striving for perfection, I don't believe in 2024. I was having a very interesting conversation, challenging conversation here with somebody the other day. Perhaps that's why I wasn't in the best of moods when we last spoke to one another. And they were challenging me. They said, do you need their attention? Is your drive, is your search for that perfection? Do you need somebody to clap for you? And from which audience do they need to clap? Obviously the conversation is somewhat broader. As again, it's not about I need somebody to clap. But if I or you or we, the listeners, don't aspire to make beauty, we don't aspire to go beyond where anybody else has ever gone before. For the simple case, it's not sustainable as an artist, as a photographer. So there's this inner urge, and we can investigate what that is in the next few minutes, maybe hour. But there's also an existential urge with the I always sort of speak broadly, and I know it's an exaggeration, 5 billion other photographers on the planet nowadays. If you don't aspire to make a picture nobody else has ever made, you won't be allowed to indulge in that creative journey. I'm obsessed with that creative journey. I love photography. I don't know whether I will ever be able to find the words to describe the passion that I have for it. And it is an aspiration for greatness, but it's not an aspiration for greatness so you clap for me. It's this absolute fear, paranoia that I won't be able to wake up tomorrow morning and be allowed or be asked to pick up a camera. It's terrifying, that thought, because I so love the process. I so love the process. I can't live without it. And as to whether that's healthy or not, that's for you, the audience, to decide. Yeah.
I think that resonates with a lot of true artists. And I use the word true because, like you said, there's 5 billion photographers out there. And I don't think all of them could call themselves true artists. But I think that's really where that and we talked about inner urge. Let's dive into that now. What do you mean by that inner urge? What does that inner urge look like for you? And it's very difficult to annotate, but try for us to explain that.
Okay, well, I'll make a segue back to the first conversation that we have, which hopefully nobody gets to listen to, but I'll ask myself the question you first asked me, and I think that's a good bridge. And I was thinking about it afterwards. What is humanity? You said to me, what is humanity? Obviously, if anybody's seen my images, it's primarily people. It's people in portrait, people in landscape. And I started asking myself, yeah, what is humanity? Humanity is me, it's you, it's the listeners, it's all of us. It's what we feel, it's compassion. We talked about it last time, empathy. It's love. It's all those human instincts, that sort of kaleidoscope of the experience. And it's everything but technology. It's everything but computers. It's everything but AI. It's everything but a robot. So that's what humanity is for me. My ongoing journey, that search for that perfect picture, and it will always be there, has been the whole of my life, ever since early childhood. Although I got my first camera when I was around 16, I was busy looking at the other and analyzing myself since very early childhood. So it's sort of an ongoing reflection on where I fit in the world, how others see me, and how I see them. And there have been a variety of sort of waves in that ongoing process, and there'll be more waves to come. But it's where I fit in that kaleidoscope of humanity, my validity in that kaleidoscope of humanity, in the 8.3 or 8.4 billion, and what I feel as a human, and what I feel as Jimmy, and being very, 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 very connected to that. And I use the camera, literally, I use the camera for that process, for that journey. And it's an obsessive journey because I really, 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 and I can't exaggerate enough, want to feel. But yeah,
Define feel. What do you feel?
I want to feel wealth, but I want to feel wealth of existence. It's not a material wealth. I want to feel beautiful. Now, that's a little bit sort of of a bold statement. As I sit here in front of you, in front of the computer, and I can see myself sort of bold as I've spent the whole of my life, perhaps, if I'm being very, very honest, it's very early in the morning here, but I'm sort of now somewhat more focused than last time, wanting to feel beautiful, but it's not beautiful in the aesthetic, it's beautiful in the validity. I think I felt beautiful as a child, and please bear with me and the audience when we refer to beauty, and when you ask me what is it, it's a feeling. Beauty is validity, beauty is being seen, beauty is whole, beauty is wealth. And up until the age of 7, I really felt that. So I can remember very clearly how my early childhood was. I traveled extensively. I had an enormous privilege because of my father's work internationally. And then between the years of 7 and 17, I was in a boarding school in the UK. And that's when that journey, that concept of being attached to my beauty, my humanity stops, and a different journey started through early childhood experiences that weren't that positive. I ran away when I was 17, and I ran away back into the world, back into all the world's furthest and most remote locations to redefine and rediscover my place, my beauty. I don't think I ever will see it or discover it. Somebody the other day asked me, isn't the ultimate journey, Jimmy, start making self-portraits? Now, it took me 25 years after the age of 16 to dare to look in a mirror after my hair had fallen out one night and never came back. So I don't know whether I'll ever get that far. But I am beginning to start feeling again. And I am beginning to feel held. And it's very important for me to feel loved. But that's in the process of making the picture. I crawl, I beg, in most cases, at the feet of others to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be trusted, and to let me into their world, let me into their life, let me into their being, let me into their humanity, let me into their wealth of understanding, their wealth of existence, their traditions, their aesthetic, their balance, their ability to own their space. That's the obsession. So it is a lifelong search for beauty. Can I don't know whether I ever will, and perhaps that's the thrill. That's why it's unending, and that's why I have these sort of unending sleepless nights. The journey has to be sustainable to get closer and closer to perhaps one day that beauty that I see, and I really do see it, and I'm convinced it exists will one day reflect back on me. And I will dare to say that I feel the same.
What is it about the other people? What is it about, you and I shoot similar types of subjects, you way more and probably more in depth, but I know why I'm kind of curious in those types of subjects. I think I know there's probably a lot of subconscious layers underneath there stemming back to childhood. Is that, and you talked about your childhood and, share what you want. But do you think a lot of this kind of interest in something so different to you and wanting to not necessarily fit in, but be part of that, belong in it and get into that world, is that something that's followed you from trauma in early childhood? Or is that something that emanated from you in adulthood, and where you kind of
No, no,
figured out what you wanted to photograph?
I'll take you there. I'll take the audience there. It's very much based on childhood, but I want to be very careful and not lean on it too much. It's not,
Hmm.
we all have our experiences, we all have our moments that formed us. By default, what happened to me, and I'll share it, has ended up enabling me to have an extraordinarily beautiful existence. Being in the world, with humanity up until the age of 7, feeling very safe, feeling seen, not feeling judged, not being hurt, not being punished, not being fed or indoctrinated with guilt. I lived in, I don't know, we lived in the Congo, Nigeria, Papua New Guinea, Iran, Tehran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Venezuela, all before the age of 7. It didn't matter where I was or how people looked or how they dressed or how they spoke. I was cool and they were cool. And I was completely unaware of the other. They were just me and my mates. At the age of 7, sent to this institution, thanks to a couple of Catholic Jesuit priests. They indoctrinated me with something else. You are not worthy. You are not beautiful. We are going to make you suffer, and it's your fault. So an institution and a group of people that were meant to protect me, meant to educate me, meant to bring me from childhood into adulthood safely, the opposite happened. I disconnected from that beauty. I disconnected from that trust, and I am still living a lifelong journey of guilt. It's all my fault. I am not worthy. That was the beginning at the age of 7. The teenage years, you disconnect from it, you bury it. One morning I woke up with no hair, all to do with stress and a little bit of the wrong medicine and malaria. Then it's your coming out moment. You are ugly. That's how I felt. I wasn't necessarily told, but it's the story I indoctrinated myself with, and it's my fault. I was never dark insofar as wanting to sort of end the journey. I wanted to begin the journey again. I wanted to reconnect with the beauty, the wealth, and this comes back to your question. What am I looking for in the other that I felt as a child? I didn't understand it when I was 7, but I felt something very aligned. I felt something where I was in flight. I was capable. And I spent the whole of my life trying to get back into that zone, into that space. And I think that space is not necessarily, I haven't studied since the age of 17. I ran away. Spent the better part of 3 years in Tibet between 17 and 19 with my first camera. And that's how the journey began. There's this lifelong autodidact learning of, coming back to the question at the beginning, what is human? What is being connected? And it's only until you understand what it is to be connected that you can feel that beauty and that validity and that wish to be a sustainable, healthy human being for the short period of time that we're blessed to be here on this planet. And the closer, the more I invest in the other, the more I invest in often it could be seen as the misunderstood or the hidden, the more I realize that perhaps their humanity is something that we're seriously losing in the West. And as we evolve and as we develop, and it's been going on throughout history, as we get more technological, more digital, more, and these are many conversations that you have, we're leaving that. We're going further and further and further and further away from that feeling, that humanity. I was taken away from that when I was 7, brutally. I died in a way. And I've been trying to realign my two states of being, the dead Jimmy and the alive Jimmy, back into one whole Jimmy that feels, that's aware of the experiences that they had in the past. And I use, to be honest, I use the learning, I use the wisdom, I use the kindness, the inclusion, the warmth, the caring, the laughter. Very important. We don't laugh here anymore. Our egos are so fucking big. Nobody, the simplicity of the other. I'm very selfish. I have to admit, and I use them to come back to that humanity, to dare to feel that Jimmy is okay. Jimmy is a sustainable, potentially on good days when he slept well, happy human being. And the camera, the medium, the analog camera, is my ticket to get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer till we sort of become one. Whereby by the wisdom that an enormous amount of these indigenous communities that I meet have ends up sort of reflecting. I sponge it up. So that's sort of what I'm looking for. Aligned with that, there is an aesthetic, there is photography, there is art, there's a story, there are books, there are exhibitions. But at the very top of the cake, fortunately or unfortunately, I have to admit, it's very much about me. Yeah.
What about what has photographing these types of people, photographing the human spirit, humanity, whatever kind of label we want to put on it? And I think you touched upon a little bit there, collective humanity. But what is your process in this and kind of finding yourself almost and finding that beauty in yourself? What has it taught you about collective humanity as a society, as a global population, and the interconnectedness of all of our stories?
Wow, big question. Whether I have a succinct, one profound answer, I'm not sure. Uh, we're all valid. We need each other, and all those stories have to be collated and collected. I think the simplistic way of looking at it is how, I think it was the other day I read or heard that by the year 2050, 80 to 85% of global humanity will live in a conurbation. So we're
Oh my
So,
goodness.
so no, in fact, we're leaving and leaving the natural world.
Mhm.
As we leave the natural world, we stop having respect for it, understanding for it, kindness for it, a care for it. And the global collective knowledge that by far the majority of the communities that I visit have, they have that wisdom. They have that awareness of how one can live aligned with the natural world, whereby one has a humility. One isn't bigger or better. One is in service of. So I always say that in the developed world where I am here in the Netherlands, it's, come on, natural world, you're in service from us, you got to, you immerses oneself in the developing indigenous world. It's the other way around. You wake up, as you've experienced, and I'm sure many of your listeners, often you wake up with the chickens at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark. The village is rustling. Everybody wakes up in this sort of almost sort of meditative state of how are we going to care for the ground, the earth, the world today before the light arrives. They're busy for hours respecting we are here in service for you. How can you keep providing for us as the light of the day arises and the day begins? It's the complete inverse. And each of these communities have different rituals, different traditions, different ways and different awareness of how they have to be kind to the world around them that will sustain them. As a result of that, I find and I feel a harmony, a humility, a balanced, and a total submission. Whenever I leave and I disappear deep into the jungle or high up into the mountains or lost in the desert, there's a silence. There's a silence of humility. And then I walk humbly behind, often with a camera, in the footsteps of the people who walk in balance with that natural world. And I wish I could take, I don't need to take you, I know you take yourself. I'm sure the majority of the listeners also take themselves, but the greater world into that state of being, into that place of humility, into that place of awe, into that place of wonder. And again, the camera is just the bridge to take me on that journey. Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, I often think that as well. But there's also a beauty in other people not sharing. It's kind of there's that selfish thing. Oh no, this is it's just for me to experience. Yeah, I'd love to show people what other real beauty, simplicity, or just other educational ways of life that we can learn from to make ourselves better people, but also hopefully through a portal such as the camera, other people, inspire other people, maybe educate other people. But yeah, I think I do think about the more remote I go, the more I'm like, people need to see this. But then I'm like,
I'm
no, they don't.
yeah, I'm doing something which for me is, I find very brave. I'm not too, and this is no disrespect for you or to all the male listeners, I'm not too enamored with male company. I'm not going to point a finger at who I'm going to blame for that when I was a child, but anyway.
Yeah.
And so this summer, I'm going to do something I've never done before. I have 3 kids, 28, 24, and 22. And I'm taking my son, who's 24. 2 years ago, I needed to reconnect with him. I've divorced from his mother about 10 years ago, and they grew up as teenagers. And obviously, there was a need for a reconnect. And I was sort of, you need to understand me. You know, you are heavily indoctrinated as to who you think I am, but that's not the case. And you will see me in my highest state of being on the road, so to speak. So I eventually persuaded my son 2 years ago to come with me to northern Pakistan, to the Karakoram. And we went seriously hiking. We went on a motorbike trip up into the Wakhan Valley of Afghanistan, and it was mind-blowing. And we reconnected, and he sort of said, I get it, Dad, I get it, you know. So this summer, myself, he, and 9 of his friends were going for a month-long hike through the Karakoram. And they're all terrified. He's persuaded them. They're all in their 20s. He's persuaded them. And luckily, I have some phenomenal Balti guides who are going to look after me, because I don't think I can look after them. But he's persuaded them to come on this journey. Come with me and my dad. Yeah. And we're going to go off into the wild wonders of the natural world. That's thrilling. A group of men, first time for me in 40 years to be in an intimate situation with a group of other men. But in some of the world's, well, not some, the highest mountains in the world, in northern Pakistan, there are 180 mountains over 7,000 meters. I mean, unbelievably epic. There are people that live within those mountains. And so I'm daring to do something at a sort of middle stage of my life that I've always wanted to do, not just make pictures, but take people with me, take them into that environment and take them on the journey that I am still on ever since that I can remember. So I'm very, very excited about that. And, which is interesting, I'm not going to take a camera.
I was just going to say.
They're all photographers and filmmakers and painters and artists and writers and poets. And I've decided to not necessarily guide them, but to watch them and they're all substantially younger than I am, terrifyingly, far more capable. I sort of hide behind, I use these 10x8 analog cameras, and they're all looking at me going, that's your problem. And which is also another journey. How can I be reintroduced to this world that I love and the people that live in it, but without a medium in my hands, and let them guide me, let them show me. So I'm terrified, but very, very excited. Yeah.
Hey guys, before I let you continue with the video, just indulge me for a few minutes. I want to briefly talk about my new brand, Yore. Founded with my business partner and photographic artist, Finn Matson, we're proud to bring you a new artisanal jewelry and specialty coffee brand. Yep, what on earth do they have to do with each other or anything at all? Well, they're both our passions. They've always been another artistic outlet for me, now for over a decade. So for those that know me, coffee has been my other obsession since I was young. And as a result of it, I'm a qualified SCA coffee specialist. So when I met Finn, some of you might have seen my podcast with him when we barely knew each other, our love for art and jewelry had a home. And that home is here, House of Yore. Yore is, amongst others, an artisan jewelry label, and it's all about the art of intent for everything that we do. Our intention with Yore was to add a touch of celestial elegance and artistic expression to our visual narratives. Every jewelry piece is a statement, a reflection of your unique story and purpose. It's not just about jewelry, it's a wearable piece of art that speaks volumes. Picture this: silver or gold adorned with an actual piece of lunar meteorite. That's right, straight from our moon, making every piece as unique as the moments that we usually capture through our lenses. From limited edition lunar jewelry pieces to finely crafted 925 sterling silver and gold rings, pendants and chains, there's something for all of you in our unique designs. We're also committed to the environment as much as possible.
Our coffee is direct trade, organically produced and locally farmed, minimizing impact on the environment as much as possible. Our jewelry packaging is all sustainable and recycled, other than the moon rock, of course. Proudly eco-friendly in both packaging and jewelry production, you can feel good about looking good. And to top it off, we offer free worldwide shipping, ensuring that a piece of lunar beauty can grace your collection no matter where life takes you. And if you ever find yourself here in Bali, please come and visit us. Our cafe and community-driven art house is a haven for creatives just like you. So before we head back into the video, please just take a moment to explore Yore's collection. And as a special treat for you, my wonderful audience, Yore is offering an exclusive discount. Head over to our website and use the code below for a 10% discount off your jewelry purchase. The link and details are in the description. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, and I'll let you get back to the video now.
Is there something, without trying to analyze this too deeply, but because I know this from a personal experience, sometimes the camera is a conduit for me, or at least a barrier between me and the outside world. Not a barrier, but it's a kind of a paradoxical barrier where I can connect with other people, but there's something in between me and someone else. So it's your normal projects where you go, all over the place in some of the most remote places in the world. Do you feel like that's a form of therapy? Do you feel like that's still kind of a way for you to just feel better? I know you talked about feeling earlier, but do you think you're on a process of, a therapeutic journey with the camera? Do you see it like that at all?
If I'm being honest, yes. I mean, I don't think I can ever get away from that narrative, but hopefully it's evolving into a healthy therapeutic journey. So the best way that I can describe it is the evolution of the medium, my understanding of the medium. I always used to, and this is the guilt and I'm not worthy issue from the past. I'm not a photographer and I'm not good. And it's not about photography. Well, I have to admit, I love photography. I love the medium, and I'm aspiring to be good at it. Aspiring. It will always be subjective, but I'm beginning to really, really enjoy it. So I don't feel now that I'm hiding behind it. I think perhaps I did in the past. Now I'm living with it. I'm owning it. I'm holding it. I'm loving it. I'm caring for it. I'm letting it care for me. And in the last 5 years, the transition, I've gone deep back into analog. I had a friend of mine design a portable 10x8 analog plate camera. A young Italian designer. It's epic when you meet these young people who are far more capable than we will ever be. And I had this sort of idea, and he's built it. I take that with me. I take a limited number of sheets. Obviously, it's extremely expensive, but it's also that narrowing down of the moment when you expose the film. You don't arrive somewhere and just spray and pray. It takes days, sometimes weeks before you even expose one plate. And you're not, when you make the image, you're not standing behind the camera. You're next to the camera, as every photographer knows. You've set the camera up, you've attached the lens, aligned it, focused it with a hood over your head. It's upside down and back to front. And then when you expose the image, you're looking at the subject. You're not hiding behind the camera. And I do that on my own. We were talking about just before we started talking, I don't take assistance. It's, my burden, my suffering that I've got to carry all this gear up the mountains across that's a whole other story. And when I'm there sweating and sort of crying and bleeding, and then it's all set up and there's that one sheet, and 10x8's, about this big. And am I going to expose that? Am I not going to expose it? It needs 3 seconds. There's 8 guys standing under a waterfall in the middle of nowhere. I'll never come back here again. I'll never find it again. Do I dare? And when you put the image in, you're looking and you're in total focus with the waterfall, with the light, with the guys standing in front of you, that they've all got to be looking at you and I'm looking at them. I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm totally naked. I'm totally vulnerable. I'm totally in the zone, in the space, in the moment, daring to expose that film, which I will not see for another 1.5 months. Did or didn't I get the picture? And so to answer your question, I'm not hiding behind the camera anymore. I think I did. I'm embracing the camera. I'm embracing the medium. I'm embracing the moment. I'm embracing the subject. I'm aspiring to be all one. The camera is there. The camera is the validation of the journey, but it's become much more. It's become an obsession of the aesthetic of the art. Can I record the feeling, that humanity that I feel, where I'm aligned? It's taken me 1.5 months to get into this location. I'm physically more connected with the environment than I've ever been before, with my vulnerability, with my need to make that picture. All the senses, they raise and raise and raise and raise until it becomes a cacophony of alignment. It's just the best way to describe it. And I'm buzzing. And then, you expose the picture and you're looking at everybody and you're not looking through the camera, and all 5 of them didn't blink and didn't move. And you go, oh, I think I have it. And I'm not going to use a sort of I'm not going to refer to sort of orgasm, but it could be sort of actually goes far beyond that. And it's a high. And I scream. And I run to them and I hug them and they hug me, and they're not quite sure what all the excitement's about. But, I've obsessively been looking at them for weeks on end, and I think I saw you. I think I saw you. I think I've recorded you in the highest aesthetic that I could in that moment. And I want to share this beauty with the world. And it's total ecstasy. And when you strip yourself down, you dare be in that moment. And you dare want to believe that you have that image, your emotions are shared. They become mutual, and more often than not, I don't know whether you've ever experienced this. Parties ensue, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and these epic parties start happening, and everybody's, because we're one. I saw you. I saw you. I saw you. I saw you in your highest state of being, and yeah. And we can't see the picture. There's no Polaroid. There's no computer. I never take laptops with me, but we're in the moment. I saw you. And then as a result, and what I'm looking for, and this is the selfish journey, is, Jimmy, we see you. You're one of us. Don't leave. And then I melt. Then I invariably cry because I'm exhausted. And I feel safe. I feel held. I feel held by humanity. And it doesn't matter where it is, whatever dangers there could have been in reaching these destinations or the indoctrination of the potential Jane, there's kindness and this humanity, these very rich, valid, knowledgeable human beings holding me and say, we see you, you're different from us, that we're not here to hurt you, we're not here to punish you, we're here to see you and hold you. And that's sort of the bridge to what is humanity. Humanity is love, without being all airy-fairy and putting candles on my head and coming in a few minutes wearing white robes. Yes, I'm a little bit sort of down to earth. But it's all about love. And I think if we as human beings, I've got to give a talk next week for a whole lot of politicians here in the Netherlands, and they'll go, yeah, you're going to give us we need to make a 10-year plan for humanity, Jimmy. First of all, I have to do it in Dutch, which is quite complicated. And then, 10-year plan for humanity, and then majority of these politicians, I hope none of them watch this podcast, are sort of somewhat, like politicians are. And I'm going, how on earth, first of all, we have no idea what's going to happen in 10 years' time, but how on earth can you care about anybody else or have any understanding of anybody? Well, look at yourself in the mirror. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't mean to be unkind. I don't mean to point fingers. I don't mean to... It's not about fatty, but it's, do you love yourself?
Just joking.
Do you love yourself? Are you in this role for the greater glory of humanity? Are you in this role for your own ego? Reflect on yourself. If you dare to love yourself, and if you dare to give yourself a 10-year plan, I, ex-politician, want to be in 10 years' time. The only way you can do that at middle age, and I'll tell you about it at the age of 56, is you've got to look after yourself. Only when you align with that and love that and embrace that, can you embrace the other or have an opinion or care about the other. So yeah, I use, again, bridging back to the camera to again, I have to be careful at this time in the morning, to love myself, to be kind to myself, to say, Jimmy, it's not your fault that you feel this or you look like this or you carry this guilt. You're okay. You're okay. Just keep doing what you're doing and love what you're doing and celebrate what you're doing. And you're just a photographer. You have no qualifications, guilt. But that's enough. That's enough. You're allowed to carry on in that process. You're not an anthropologist. You're not a politician. You just love humanity. And you're doing that because you're trying to love yourself. It's a very, very, very simple journey. It's become my obsessive journey, but it's not very complicated. And I would love other people to not necessarily pick up a 10x8 camera and disappear off into the jungle. It's complicated, but to dare to go on that creative journey of discovery, but it's of discovery of self. Why do I need to do what I need to do? How can I sustain it? And if it's involving other human beings, how can I learn, feel, align, be inspired? Yeah.
I think there's so much to learn from what you're just talking about. That the phrase "I think I saw you" really resonated with me. I haven't really heard it explained that way before, but it makes total sense. Certainly from portrait photographers, you know, you just get it. Not only are you able to see other people, but you are also to see you're able to see yourself more. I mean, sometimes I just react in ways I never knew I could react, or could behave in most hopefully good ways. But it's really fascinating that symbiosis between seeing other people, allowing this camera to kind of formulate that, allow you to be present in that moment. I think it's such an underrated power, not power, but it's very powerful, I should say.
But yeah.
Go on.
Thank you. I don't know whether I related this story the other day when we did our pre podcast, which is hopefully down the pin. Something happened to me not so long ago, and this is the antithesis of seeing this story. But I don't have a picture, I don't have a name, I don't have a telephone number. I only have a memory of a few minutes. But it's all about this obsessive curiosity of the other. And humility. What can I keep learning by connecting with the other? Not so long ago, here in the winter in the Netherlands, I was on a station platform very early in the morning. I didn't really want to be there. It was 6:30, wet, cold, rainy, as it invariably is here in the Netherlands, not like in Bali. Everybody's wearing black, including me. I'm, for one stupid reason or another, got a big bicycle I want to carry onto the train. And at the other end of the platform, there's a person wearing a red coat. And I'm sort of, a bit curious as always, and I'm a bit half sleepy. And red coat at 6:30 in the morning in November on a station platform in the Netherlands. Are you mad? We should all be with our head in our telephones in the darkness. And I said, oh, wow. And I looked a bit closer. Very beautiful woman. Forgive me. I said, wow, interesting. So I sort of, okay. And then the curious sort of, what on earth is... Somebody's making an effort here, and I want to understand why. So I sort of fought the crowd, put my bike on the train. Everybody's huffing and puffing and grunting and being very direct and very Dutch. I'm one of them now, by the way, so don't worry, I'm not judging. Parked my bike, sort of walked down a couple of carriages, and there at the end of the carriage, there's a lady sitting. And great coincidence, this is serendipity. I love serendipity. There's the only chair that's empty opposite her. So I thought, I'm going to go and sit there. So I sat down opposite. It's not that I'm some sort of, overly confident sort of gigolo, but just curious of the other. Sat opposite her. And within seconds of sitting, I understood why I'd sat there. She was sitting very straight, a little bit like a sort of a Mary Poppins figure, very classically dressed, tight jacket, flowers in her hair, beautiful colors. And she was sort of waving from side to side, a little bit like Stevie Wonder. And then she started folding a white stick. And she put the white stick on her lap, and then it clicked. She's blind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now this is interesting. So now, you're thinking, I knew there was a reason. And then the story evolves. And then she, in a very high, beautifully pitched Dutch voice, says, I need somebody's help. Everybody cringes. And she says, I need your help like this, because today is a special day. And people are looking, but sort of cringing and, oh my God, you're not meant to talk to each other at this time in the morning. People are turning up their volume. I'm going on a date. As you can see, I've made an enormous effort today to look. I've got my heels on, but I need to get out of the station platform further down here, and I've never been there before. So no white stick's going to help me get anywhere. So I need somebody's help to get off the train. Nobody replies. Nobody replies, including me. I'm sort of dumbfounded again. First of all, not knowing where she needs to get off, and I've got my bike, so I'm not going to abandon my bike and help this beautiful lady off the train. So I'm quiet. her surroundings are quiet. And then she's sort of flustered, but also, accepting, well, here we go again, this is the way of the world. Doesn't look like there's anybody else sitting on the train with me. Doesn't look like there's anybody else sitting on the train with me here today. I suppose I'll just have to look after myself. Like always, it's okay. So she's rummaging in her handbag, and she pulls out a pair of headphones on a cable, and they're in a knot. And then I sort of leant across and said, "Excuse me, I'm Jimmy. I don't know where you're going, and I don't think I can get off the train and help you, but I can help you untangle your headphones." And she goes, "Oh, finally, somebody to talk to." So I sort of untangling the headphones, and then I sort of gather a little bit of bravery. I said, can I ask you a question, please?" And she starts to smile. She says, "Yeah, I love questions." And I said, I noticed you earlier, and I was a little bit confused. Where and why has all this effort come from? Where'd you find the daring to be so beautiful? I simply said, "Look at us. Look at this carriage." And you said you're going on a date, but I'm sure there are other reasons. And she started to beam from end to end of her mouth. And it was wonderful to watch. And everybody starts now listening and sort of looking up from, not that they have newspapers anymore, but from their telephones. And she goes, "Yeah, thank you for asking. This is epic." She says, "I know I'm beautiful, but I haven't seen for 25 years.
Wow.
But I feel beautiful." Many, many years ago, when I was a young child, my mum came up and said, "Sweetie, you're slowly going blind. You'll never see again. But that's okay. You're going to go on a journey most people will never go on. We're going to discover what your real, real beauty is. And when you connect with that, this will carry you through your life. And it doesn't matter whether you can or you can't see." So that's the journey she went on with her mother. And she said, "Today, I wake up every morning and I invest." Obviously, people taught me how to do it. "I invest in looking beautiful. Today's an exception because I'm going to meet somebody. But there's not one day in my life that people don't come up to me blindly," using a metaphor, on the street, "and thank me for my beauty." She stood up. As she stood up, 3 other men got up and said, "We need to help you." So they grabbed her. They sort of carried her, and she sort of floated across the platform up the escalator. And I sat behind in the train. I hadn't made a picture. I hadn't got a number. I didn't know her name. I'd just listened to her story, and I had envy beyond your wildest imagination. Here's somebody who I have all the assets. I have all the privilege, perhaps missing a little bit of hair. That's it. And here's somebody who hasn't seen for 25 years, and she felt beautiful, and she was beautiful, and she is beautiful. And that's that journey. That's what I'm looking for. And that incessant curiosity to be in stories, to be with humanity, to be searching, to be looking for answers and learning as you go, realizing you'll never get there. But the humility and the awareness of the need to know it and learn from it, and whether it's in Papua New Guinea or wherever, or on a train in rainy Netherlands, those stories are all there. And that, so it's not about the camera. It is, I'm an obsessive photographer, but even if I don't have the camera, I'm innately curious about other human beings. I want to listen to their stories. I want to learn. Yeah.
So where does that mean? Where do you belong in the world in that respect then? And where does your photography sit in the photography hemisphere?
Good question. I don't know, to be honest. I'm Jimmy, nothing more, nothing less. Every night I go to bed worried that I won't be able to wake up in the morning and be allowed to take pictures. I love the art of photography. I would love to inspire other people to see the world the way I see it. And it's very subjective. It's very romantic. It's very directed. When I arrive, I don't take pictures sometimes for weeks. It's all about the interaction. It's the stories. It's the awareness. It's the understanding. It's the observation. And then it's the safety that we mutually feel. And then I ask a community to present themselves to me as they would like to be seen, as they feel in their pride, in their honor. So I'm not a journalist. I will never win any award. I think I'm just an artist. I'm just Jimmy. I'm an artist and I use a camera and nothing more, nothing less. And whether my art or my aesthetic resonates, that is to be seen in time. I don't know. It does with me. I used to worry that it wasn't valid. It is valid for me and I love it. And if the rest of the world never looks at another picture that I make, I will carry on making them until I sort of disappear. So does that answer the question?
It does, yeah. I find that sometimes, including myself, it's difficult to have that feeling of belonging. You know, photography. If we take photography just as a craft, right? Just the technique of taking a photograph, it's kind of an individual sport, as an individual pursuit. So it's not like you're in an office. I mean, I know we have studios and we work with other people, but you kind of know what I mean. Like pressing that shutter button is just you and getting the project, the idea, the concept. You know, most of the time, in your case especially, you don't really want other people helping you. There's, you know, you are the person that is, you know, on that journey. You're the only person that's on that journey for that specific journey. We're all on different journeys, but I mean photography specifically. And sometimes it can be lonely. Sometimes you know, all the time imposter syndrome, you know, sets in. So I only ask that question because sometimes it's difficult for us to, and I only say us because I've spoken to other people about that, and me included. It's sometimes too difficult to grab onto that feeling of, okay, I belong in this world, in terms of this world of photography and world of art, and you know, the community of photographers and the community of travelers, or the community of the tribe that I'm visiting. So it's, you know, that's the reason why I kind of asked that question. Where do you kind of fit in? Where do you belong in that?
It's a very important question. You asked it again, and I'll evolve my answer. So I'm losing my English, having lived in Holland for more than 33 years. Sometimes I'm sort of struggling for Dutch words, but also English words nowadays. That's why I'm a photographer.
We can put subtitles.
I think my advantage is, amongst others, I'm 56. I'll be 57 in November. I personally am not on social media. I have a small team here. Anybody who sustains themselves as an artist like I do has people to help them. They more than help me. They look after me. They care for me. There are 5 amazing ladies. One of them does the social media. I have no idea how to open social media or apply something to social media, and I'm not watching other people on social media. That has advantages and disadvantages. Let's talk about the advantages. Is I'm free. I'm not counting. I don't feel I'm being monitored. I'm in the zone. I'm in my zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's very indulgent. Whether that zone's healthy or not, or it's complete madness, could be. Time will tell. They'll go, oh, that poor guy. He thought he was making images that were valid. But if you leave that zone and you start analyzing, where is my place? What is my validity? What is my legacy? It's paranoia sets in. And it's not that I haven't occasionally been there. Perhaps last week when we spoke, or a few days ago, I was there. I'd sort of gone in and started getting objectivity. Oh my God, Jimmy, you are not worthy. Maybe that was the issue. It's extremely important not to I don't want to preach, but to be in that space. What matters to you? What is the wealth of the process? What is the wealth of the pitch? And if you're happy making it, if you're satisfied with what you've seen, with what you've experienced, and you love yourself, again, we're getting back to that, that should be enough. That should be enough. Mm-hmm. And I've had sort of many cycles in my sort of life journey, and there'll be many more to come. But I can remember very clearly 16 years ago, big onset of digital photography. I'd been working as a commercial photographer. I mean, basically the work I do now, I started as a kid. I let go of, or I got married very young when I was 23, had 3 kids, amazing. As I said, I'm separated. And then I worked as a commercial photographer for many years to pay, in Dutch you say, the gas en licht, the gas and the light and the bills and the nappies and the schools and the handbags for the wife. Sorry, I shouldn't go there. And I ran and I ran and I ran. And then one day I sort of, had this sort of, crisis moment, let's say I crashed. And the onset of digital photography and commercial photography was nosediving. My day fee went from €10 to €1. And Jimmy, we like you, but we're not going to, we're only going to pay you the market price. So essentially my business died, amongst other things. And I can remember thinking, going back to that child, going back to that voice of when I was 7, what matters? Wow, what matters is being in the world, being with humanity, being with a camera, with people that I see, I want to connect with. Mm. And I remember having this sort of, this sort of a moment of inspiration, and people around me were going, well, you're mad. photography's dead. Nobody's interested in pictures of indigenous cultures. And I can remember saying very clearly, what I am. It's the wealth of my journey. It's what I need to be happy. It's what I need to be whole. It's what I need to sustain. If I carry on this journey, I will go mad. And I can't go mad because I have the responsibility of 3 young kids. You will never earn a single penny ever again. Well, it's not going very well at the moment, is it? So everything's more than where I am at the moment, you know. So, but at least if I go down this path, which I chose full-time 60 years ago, I'll be a happy bunny, whether I earn any money doing it or not, but I'll be happy. And as a result of being a happy person and a healthy person, I may be a better dad than I'm being at the moment. I was earning quite well. So, and then that was a very profound moment. And then I disappeared, I ran away, have the habit of doing that every now and again. And I disappeared into Mongolia in the depths of a winter that was the worst winter they'd had in decades, and got lost, didn't have the right clothing, froze, but came back to life. And that was 16 years ago. And then from that day on, this is happiness. This is me. Maybe very eccentric, maybe very odd, maybe very obsessive. There may be no reason for it, but this is where I belong. This is who I am. And I'm going to do everything in my power, my limited power, and it is quite limited, unfortunately, to sustain this happiness, to get back to Jimmy's okay. And here we are 16 years later, and it's still a daily process. There's no cruise control. I wish, or not. There's no cruise control. Every morning I wake up as early as possible, do my hair, put on my makeup, and go, right, seize the day. How are we gonna survive today? But I love it. Yeah.
So, let's touch upon that a little bit before I come back to something you talked about earlier. How, without sounding too crude, how do you make money? I know it must be so liberating to not be under the pressure of, you're under many pressures, I know, but just commercial jobs and commercial pressure. Tell us a little bit about your business model, because I know some of my audience who are just kind of getting into photography, who look up to you and want to kind of do what you do, but they also need to pay the rent and then it was pay the bill. So, tell us a little bit about your current business model and how that's sustainable.
First of all, I'm not a businessman. I can't add up 1 and 1. That's perhaps one of the reasons I ran away from school.
It's 11.
One of the reasons. It's 11. I thought it was 32. I tried to be, when I was younger, a businessman, an entrepreneur, and I failed on more occasions. I'm not going to give you show you the evidence or the crash landing. The first most important thing in the business model is I delegate all the things I can't do, and that's 9 out of the 10. So if you look at my 10 fingers, I often say, this is me. I'm the industrialists say the pinky, the small finger, and my team supply the other 9. That's the most important aspect. As a result of that, I need to pay their salaries. So I need to work my arse off. But that's also a bit like sort of, here we go into sort of Catholic education. I'm sort of flagellating myself to run like hell to enable to pay their salaries. But that gives you the power. I'm so not good at all those other things. They so don't make me happy because I'm reminded how not good I am at them. The only thing I can do is, or I think I can do, is make a picture. So perhaps it's not that I work even harder, but that really sustains me. That really drives me, because without that team, I can't make the picture. What they do for me, they manage, I have a studio here in Amsterdam. That's where I am at the moment. It's a studio, workspace, gallery. We publish our own books. So we design, invest, publish, and distribute our own books. So that's one very important part of the business model. I've been publishing and selling books, not personally, but with publishers for the last 15 years. Very important, and this is also important for listeners, as you will enter the artistic world, there's a multitude of people around you that will indoctrinate you into being insecure. You can't. We will do it for you. And for that, we need a percentage. One of them is publishers. The first few publishers I went to, you ended up earning, not more than a toothpick for every book that was sold. And in some cases, hundreds of thousands of books were sold, and we never earned more than a toothpick, because after a long process of attrition, all that money sort of dissipated. So that business model we flipped. So we will do it ourselves. We will control it. We will make it, produce it, print it, design it, and distribute it. That requires part of the team. It's a very expensive process, but at least you can control the return. I exhibit in galleries and museums, and I sell limited edition prints. That's a very interesting, difficult process. You can do it in one of two ways. You can do it yourself, where you can control the business model, or you do it in the artistic world. And when you do it in the artistic world, you have to disconnect from 50 to 60% of the income. But then the curatorial word validates you, but for that they earn in return. Yeah. And you have to choose option A or B. Option A is, both options are insecure. Option B, when you do it yourself, you will never perhaps be validated in the artistic or in the curatorial world because nobody's earning directly from you. But you can perhaps control the narrative. Thirdly, I do quite a bit of public speaking. This is a medium that I fell into accidentally about 10 years ago. I did a TED Talk by accident, and that resulted in quite a bit of corporate speaking. And that's a very important business model. Fourthly, I have a small foundation. And once or twice a year, I will take a group of CEOs with me on a journey, and they contribute to the foundation. The foundation is a pot whereby all the excess income that we earn gets put back into, and I return it to the people I work with. So it's this sort of theme of reciprocity. I am given something, I monetize your identity and with a picture, but I have to return an element of that monetization, and that's what we do within the foundation. So I think I mentioned this last time. At the end of the month, there's never anything in the pot. There's no pension, there's no savings, there's no mortgage to be paid. So whatever comes in goes out. That's terrifying, to be honest. But if I don't do that, if I don't reinvest everything to the people who work with me to sustain the little business and to give back within the foundation, I don't believe and this is where we all get sort of, into guilt, I'll be allowed to carry on doing what I'm doing. So I don't believe I'm allowed to hold any of that material asset. So I will never be a rich businessman, but I'm aspiring to be a very rich individual. So I think as artists or as photographers, everybody who's listening, don't go on this journey hoping to cha-ching. Go on this journey to feel that wealth. And I think one can get very close to becoming one of the richest humans in the world if one indulges deep on this journey, but you will always have an empty bank account.
So there you go, everyone.
or you don't have to, but then here's another part of the business model. So I'm regularly asked by commercial organizations, let's say, I'm going to mention that Shell wants to come and put a sticker on my head. A nice irony, it's the company my father used to work for. Oh, Jimmy, here's a pot of gold and, never have to worry about money again. Then I would solve all my financial issues, but then I would believe I wasn't walking the talk. Then I would become a hypocrite. Then I would be using funds and there are a number of other people whose names I'm not going to mention who wallow in their self-worthiness, but behind the scenes, they're being funded by large corporate organizations. And I think that's somewhat hypocritical, but it's for them to feel that and know that without, for me, outing them. I feel very, very strongly you have to not, do that. But that's my own suffering and that's my own journey. Yeah.
Well, you're clearly you're clearly a person with a lot of integrity that comes across just in an online conversation.
I try. I'm failing the whole time. I mean, the other day when I was in a bit of a bad mood, that was because I was worrying. I was panicking. And here I am. Doesn't matter how many books I've published or how many exhibitions I've had or how kind people are in their compliments. You're always on that narrow edge but perhaps you have to be there to be alive, to be alert, to not be complacent, to not be what's the right word? I think you get
sanctimonious.
Yeah, sanctimonious. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think again, you may be being too harsh on yourself. You're the first guest I've had to admit that, I didn't present myself in the best possible way. And can we do it again? I mean, I was shocked. What? I didn't notice it, but that's pure honesty, right? That's ego aside. That's, yeah. I mean, so, I think, everyone's human in those aspects. Like, you will have a shit conversation every now and then, or you may not turn up to be the best version of you at various points in your life. Of course, that's going to happen. But yeah, be able to be aware of that, acknowledge it, and admit it, and then not just to yourself, but to the other person that it may have affected. That is true integrity. I mean, that is surely. And I talk about this all the time in terms of honesty and dishonesty. If you live a dishonest life, however kind of nuanced that definition is, you will escape happiness until you realize what true honesty is. But I wanted to dive in on that. Certainly there's photographers who have the little devil on their shoulder. It may not be a devil, it may not be as big conglomerate like Shell, who's got that pot of gold ready for you to dive into. It may just be a sponsor who's going to pay you a little bit of a retainer every month so that you can live and therefore able to go out and do more meaningful work, right? There is always this fine balance between commercialism and passion. And I think it's difficult to remain integral all the time when you might be able to free up some of your capacity, some of your creative thinking. Maybe you might be able to afford that trip to somewhere that you want to go and explore and go to. So it's a constant conveyor belt of temptation versus, honesty and meaningful, and trying to be just a better person as well as a photographer. So I do understand people who have that battle, and most commercial photographers do have that battle, and some don't care. It's the people that don't care and then lie about it, like you said, have this persona and chase that status. That's a little bit different. But on the kind of smaller scale, I do have a lot of sympathy with. I mean, I'm there. I am that guy.
I do, and I've been struggling, and I'm still struggling as a photographer since I was a kid. It was always a struggle from the beginning, but maybe that's my nature. Maybe that's my narrative. I think the only thing that's important is for you to know your narrative. If you flip it, and like I'm often asked, yeah, I want to do what you do, and the simple question, what camera should I buy? Oh, it's the wrong question. And I sort of flip it. And I said, well, it's okay. I understand why you've asked that question. I'm not judging you for it. When I was 18, I bought a box of cameras with long lenses because I thought that was the package that I needed. The only thing that matters is what's the story you're going to tell. And that story gets richer and richer and richer and richer as life, for as long as we're given, life passes. And you have to be aligned with that story and resonate with that story and listen to that story and love that story. And then how you tell that story with whatever medium, whatever camera, whatever lens, whatever sponsor, whatever business model is up to you.
Right.
And it's all valid. It's all valid. And if you want to go and save the rainforest, but be sponsored by a mining company, go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not judging, but that's your story. And as long as it's true to you and it's the narrative you want to tell, be my guest. We've sat here for the last few minutes and I'm sort of, woe be me and suffering and the fear, but that's what makes me tick. That's what keeps me alive. That's what pushes me. Without that, I wouldn't be obsessively running around the world with a 10x8 analog camera. So that's my story. That's my journey. I think I now understand the narrative, but it's not the journey I'd advise everybody to go on.
But don't we have... Go on.
Sorry. The only thing that matters is it's in an artistic context. And if I'm not trying to sound like a grey, wise old man, I'm obviously not grey and definitely not wise, but getting old, is you have to be obsessive. You have to be obsessive. There's an amazing TED talk on with this young Chinese lady, American Chinese, and she's epic. And she goes, what's success? And bam, 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 she reels it all off: good looks, height, money. And she says, no, it's grit, obsession. Never, ever, 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 ever giving up. And if one doesn't have that, I don't think it's possible to sustain this journey as a photographer or as an artist. And you have to deeply align with that obsession. And that's the narrative. And if you understand the narrative, then you know where you get the energy from. Then you've got to be careful. The obsession has to be healthy, because it can sort of take you the wrong way.
It can. And there is a line, I think, whether you agree with me or not on this, there's a point as a photographer, as an artist, or someone, if your work is in the public, most people's work is in the public now for reasons that we know about, but do you not think that we have a responsibility to be integral, to be honest, to try and promote a good message? Where, obviously it has to be true to you, otherwise it will mean nothing, and you won't do it. You won't find that obsession to make it better and better and better and better and spread that voice. I think voice is so important, especially as a photographer. Do you not think then that there is, it's not like go and do whatever you want as long as it's true to you. I do think there is a line that we can influence people for the good or bad things, and we have to be aware of that, especially if we're in a public facing role, whether we like it or not. I'm not talking about super famous or anything, but 1,000 loyal followers, whether they're followers who buy your books, clients who come to your talks, or followers on social media, whatever. There is an element of responsibility. We can't just go around shouting shit and just creating outrage just because it's going to make us money, right? So would you agree with that? It's not like go do whatever you want.
I totally agree with it, but I don't want to judge. I know how difficult it has been and still is for me to be honest, and it's this lifelong obsession. It's this lifelong obsession of understanding why certain things happen. But I can't. I'm not going to preach or advise others. It's up for every individual. But I think if humanity was vulnerable and honest, then we would be in a far different place than we are. And that's the biggest issue. And that's what so upsets me, because the potential for humanity, the potential for kindness, for compassion, for empathy, all these aspects we need as photographers, if that could sort of saturate into other parts of society, then we would be in a far better place. But the individual themselves, you can't be indoctrinated. You can't be told to do that. You have to be it and feel it. So the same goes for photographers. They themselves have to, the listeners, have to discover that truth. All that I can say is, sort of passing the pivot of middle life and getting a little bit older, it's liberating, that truth, that honesty. It's wonderful. It's terrifying, but you're alert. You're alive. You're flying in that fragility. The story I told last time, and I'm not going to rabbit on about that feather in Forrest Gump. That's letting it fly and it taking you to the lightness of being. When that feather is whole, when that feather is pure, when that feather is the essence of the wing, that child, it flies. It flies, and that comes through being honest and being vulnerable and being human and being fragile. And in that fragility, you're, in Dutch you say, ontarmed. You're gathered and held by the world. And I'm still here. I've done some perhaps stupid things but I never go over the edge. I'm always touching the edge. I'm always looking over I'm touching the void, to use the term of the title of the book. I'm looking over the edge, but I never get so close that I fall off it. But by always looking over the edge, I'm learning, I'm getting closer and closer and closer to a very, very fine line of fragility and honesty. And it's liberating. Yeah. And so to answer that question to the person who asked me the other day, would you one day end up taking self-portraits? And it's not perhaps about vanity, but the turning the camera on yourself. What do you see? And you can only do that if you're totally honest. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. Yeah.
How do you then, I'm going to talk about this in two facets of your images. So first of all, it's going to be the process. I want to talk about the logistical and physical process, because I know it's interesting to me, but I know it's interesting to many people out there. How do you go and get these images? But really more importantly for me, I want to dive into it, is how you go about thinking of a story, how you go about creating that story with the camera, with you, with connections. And we talk about film photography allows you to be more present. Is that a conscious decision, or was it an evolutionary decision? But talk to me about those two kind of sides of your images and your projects, and the art that you put together. Talk to me about that process, and then talk to me about the storytelling. How you go about telling a story and creating a story?
Good question. Thank you. I'll try and begin with the first part, and then we'll evolve into the second part. And I'll take you and your listeners on the creative journey I'm on at this moment today. Not necessarily sitting with you, but I'm manifesting a project in the Middle East. The working title, I don't think it will be the title, it's called The Souls of the Sand. I think most of the books I make are fairly ambiguous titles because I don't want to be specific, before they pass away, between the sea and the sky. It's more about a sort of poetic, artistic interpretation of a subject. So when you refer to the Middle East, often you think of religion, you think of economy, you think of anger, fear, hate. I think the Middle East has been more documented than any other part of the world in the last 40 years. But there's only one form of documentation that comes out of there. I want to invert that narrative. I am traveling on a regular basis to a variety of countries between the Stans and Morocco, it's the Greater Nima. And I'm trying to retell a narrative. I'm trying to look for indigenous, authentic culture that still exists, to make a picture, to tell a story that's a positive as opposed to a negative narrative. And as I said, this part of the world, I'm just been in Yemen, on the border of Saudi, and I'm going back there again next month, and I'll explain what I'm doing. The only images and only stories we've had from that part of the world are negative, ever since I can remember. The narrative that I'm going to tell is something very different and experiencing as a result. So, a part of this greater story, I wanted to visit some tribal communities on the border of Yemen and Saudi in the Asir region in the far southwest, right down in the corner. You straddle the border, so you're working in Yemen. I've never been there before. The only narrative and information I have is online, which is negative. Don't go. So how I normally go, so I go anyway. When they say don't go, that's the first thing. I go everywhere they say don't go. I go on my own, and I go with no cameras. So I was there last month, went with a little backpack, and I did take an iPhone with me, and I went on a 2-week journey, 2.5-week journey, right the way down, just as a tourist. And I went to see, to see, is what I read on the internet the real story, or is there something else going on? I discovered what I knew was there, didn't make any pictures, had a variety of conversations, and said, can you help me if I was to come back on my own with cameras? And this is what I would like to do. I obviously took copies of my books with me, and it's basically a 2.5-3 weeks conversation. The answer was yes, and we will look after you, and we understand what you're trying to do. So I'm going to go back again next month. I will go on my own. I've got a small team on the ground going to meet me, a translator, a guide, a couple of tribal leaders, and I will turn up with a lot of kit. It's always a bit of a struggle getting there. 10x8 camera, probably about 10 boxes, about 10 sheets, so it's 100 images, tripods, backgrounds, reflectors. I only use ambient light, never artificial light. Gear. So it's probably about 100 kilos. Wow. 50 of that kilo I carry as hand baggage because I've got to get on 4 different flights. I could write a book about that one day, how you travel around the world with 50 kilos hand baggage. It's fun. It's an art into itself. We could have a whole other podcast if you want to talk about that. You can't check in any of the gear because I will never see it again. It's not only bespoke made, but I just won't see it. I know through experience by the time there's 3 or 4 flights, I will not see it. So I carry it. That's a whole other story. If and when I get there, I will disappear 90 and hopefully come back. Be careful what I say. Touch wood. 95% of the time is conversation, and 5% of the time will be making the image. Of that 5%, 4% is portraits. It's the meeting of the individuals. It's creating a set using ambient light and reflected light photographing the primary individual within the community, praising them, honoring them, worshipping them in essence, and gradually the rest of the community come to the camera. And then as the climax, we go off into the mountains and I try to make these landscape shots. The region I'm going to is unbelievably beautiful. It's not online. You can't see any images there. I mean, if you think Wadi Rum in Jordan is spectacular, just you wait and see what I'm going to do. If and when those images are complete, I come back and then I'll go back again with one of my colleagues here and we'll film it. So it's a 3-tier process.
Okay.
90% of the time. So that's the build-up. Then, so for example, I'm going the beginning of next year to Iran. I'm going to go and live with the Qashqai nomads for a month. I've been there once on my own. I'll go back again on my own with the camera, and then I'll go back again for the 3rd time and film it. And that tends to be the more difficult and complicated regions in the world. It's always on my own at the beginning. That's when I'm most fragile. If you arrive with an entourage and there's a whole crew and there's drones and there's bags and there's pelican cases, it's very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
If you arrive fucking terrified on your own and you show it, there's that fragility. And in that fragility, there's an enormous sort of, oh dear, somebody's lost. Not too different than I was when I was 17, wandering across Tibet as a lost teenager. But you're sort of almost reenacting that moment of abandonment, vulnerability, nakedness. I'm a little bit eccentric and a bit odd, and oh wow, this is somebody we don't normally want here. But being on his own, he's not here with any long black things, and he's crying, sitting, shaking, sweating. Perhaps he needs our help. And then that's the beginning of the process. It's extremely important to be in that way and to be very, 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 very patient. And then I'm covering a lot of ground. The longer term dual, we say in Dutch, process is it's not about the quantity of images. It's about that small select handful where everything is aligned. It's the investment of the story, the journey, the understanding, the connection, the knowing, the learning. And that's where you're aligned with your narrative. This is what I want to put into the picture. That helps with being older. You know, when I was younger, you would spray and pray, although we didn't have digital, but still with analog. And as time goes, you narrow down the image that you're looking for. So it's very much about the experience up front. The story that I'm going to tell, I have no idea.
Right.
Second part of the question, I have no idea. The best way, this is how I always, and people look at me and they go, but you must know who you're going to meet and what it's going to cost and how many pictures you're going to make and what time you're going to come back. No, this is the analogy of a good chef. I cannot cook to save my life, 10 years in an institution, but let's use the analogy of a chef. I really, really, like my eldest daughter can cook like nobody. She can walk into any kitchen anywhere. She can analyze the ingredients, but she instinctively knows and trusts that she can align all those ingredients and make something spectacular. She doesn't have a menu, she doesn't have a picture, and she's not going to publish a book. But she trusts that process. It's in her blood. It's in my blood for a variety of reasons since my birth that I intuitively know I've gathered a variety of ingredients and it will align to something. But what it will align to, I don't know. There is no menu and there is no picture and there is no expectation. Because there's no client, I'm my own client. This is very important. And because I'm the only one who's responsible for the investment, I can trust that process. There is no expectation. So I don't have to promise anything to anybody other than to myself. So I'm my own beast of burden, so to speak. So my expectations are beyond here. So if I'm to make a new book, it has to be beyond anything I've ever made before for it to be valid. What it will look like and the story that I'll tell, I don't really know. All I instinctively feel is that it's a journey that I have to go on. I have to retell that narrative of that part of the world. I know, and I've seen, and I've already recorded, and I'm not going to show yet, there's unbelievable beauty there, human beauty. From the last part, I mean, it's if you talk about civilization, it all began here. But forever since I can remember, and younger people around me, it's only one story. I want to flip that story. How I'm going to flip it And whether I will survive to tell the tale, time will tell. So that's how I go about a journey, making a book. Yeah.
And the
Does
images
that make sense?
yeah, it does. I mean, you've got an overarching concept, right? You've got a narrative, and you decided, like, I want to put a positive spin on it. I want to see what it's really
not
like.
necessarily positive spin. I want to tell a different story. I visited a number of these countries as a child. I spent many months in Afghanistan when I was in my late teens. We lived in Iran. So I know there's something else there. For the last 30 years, I haven't been brave enough to go there because I was told it's not safe. I'm now curious enough, and it's not about being brave, but in my own narrative, to want to go and discover for myself. And I know that the medium I'm using, and I know the context of the story that I want to tell. I'm looking for beauty.
Yeah, that's what you're
I'm
trying
looking
to.
For beauty and humanity. Yeah,
that's what you're trying to evoke in your images.
Yeah,
that is the story.
Nothing more, nothing less, and that's aligned with my own search.
Quick one on the process, because I get this all the time. Like, half my images are semi-staged, right? I'm directing. I'm putting in specific positions in order to create a beautiful aesthetic and also have something underneath that, right? Ignorant people kind of criticize that a lot. And I'm sure you may get that. I mean, I understand why you have to stage these things and why you want to stage them. But when you talk about, I see you and getting into the soul of these people with a staged photo, it's almost like a contradiction in terms, right? How do you analyze that?
Long answer, short answer. I'll start with the short answer. I listened to your podcast with the amazing photographer Joey L, and he said there hasn't ever been one picture since the beginning of time that wasn't essentially staged in a variety of forms. It's a farce to say that a picture isn't staged. And again, I don't want to use names of other photographers. We're not going to go there, but every single picture is subjective to the eye of the photographer, and how they're going to build the frame around it, and how they're going to choose when or not to expose the shutter speed. But then at the same time, there's a whole arc of what can be perceived as staging, but it's all staging. It's the subjective recording. I do stage, but I stage for me what is a different truth. So I rarely take reportage pictures. I'll use my iPhone every now and again to record a few things for myself. My pictures are a climax at the end of a meeting, and an end of a knowing, an end of an understanding. But it is as truthful as running in and spraying and praying with an iPhone at the beginning. I'm just trying to tell a different story. And I can remember 10 years ago when one of my first books came out, and there was quite a bit of online discussion. Jimmy Nelson and his before they pass away. And I remember thinking, well, this is a bit odd. And a number of journalists, what do you mean it's odd? And I said, well, ever since time began in our world, let's say in the Western world, every picture the majority of the pictures that we see, we publish, we show, are all staged, but we never comment on that. That it's this aspired state of being, it's this beauty, it's this wealth, it's this elegance. 90% of all images are this sort of celebrated podium. But we've never commented about that, whether it's true or untrue. This is our aspired state of being, this beauty aesthetic. If I, in my eccentricity, need and want, disappear into the developing world and apply that same narrative, sorry, it doesn't count. They're the poor people. No. They're naked. They run around the jungle with feathers on their head, banging drums. No. The same is what happened, if you spin it back up more than 100 years, to Edward Sheriff Curtis. Edward Sheriff Curtis, if any of your listeners don't know who he is, please Google one of my heroes. He spent 30 years of his life documenting the Native American Indian. He made 30 volumes, the most extraordinary aesthetic documentation of one of the richest cultures to ever walk this planet that was annihilated. When he died, the same narrative was being told. Oh, you're a loser. This is a waste of time. This is poverty. This is backward. This is ancient. This is primitive. The last 30 years of your life are wasted. We're going to destroy 90% of your images, and you're going to die a pauper. That's what happened to him. In the 1970s, a few of the negatives were found in a bookshop somewhere in New York.
Wow.
They were published, and contemporary American society went, "Oh, did this used to be the people who walked this nation?" Yeah. And look at them. And they entered the world. And then there was this massive conversation around it, but this wasn't real. He staged them. Now, he spent the last 30 years of his life and the last 30 years of the Native American Indian on this tour. And he did do not too different to what I'm doing. He would walk into their communities and he said, "This is about to go and disappear. I'm here to record it for posterity's sake. It's valuable and it's important. Come to me at your most dignified. Come to me at your most beautiful. Come to me when the light comes from here and the mountains here and the winds here and the feathers are there. I don't want to photograph you in disrespect or in poverty, your wealth, your beauty. I want to put you on a pedestal." So not too dissimilar to him. That's what I'm doing now. There are two different narratives. You can disappear off into Yemen, where I was, and run around with a reportage camera and follow everybody with the guns, or you can walk into their communities, spend weeks sitting, watch their ceremonies, look at their traditions, and ask them to come to me in a kind space and tell a different narrative. Show you and the world, and wait until you see what I've made. And I'm making some of the most beautiful people I've ever seen in my life, with traditions that do not exist anywhere else on the planet. It's unbelievably, and that's staged. Or is it? That's the conversation. Or is it just a different narrative? Do I go in with a flak jacket on with press and photograph a couple of dead bodies on a street, or do I disappear off into the mountains and live with the community and say what's going down there in the city is a very different story was what's happening up here on the mountains? Tell that story with me. Show that to me. Show that in its dignity, its beauty. And the way I do it is obsessively with a camera, because I'm trying to make an artistic aesthetic. So I totally stand behind my process of working. And it's not too dissimilar to Edward Sheriff Curtis, many other photographers. And in all honesty, I don't think as a photographer or as an artist, you should worry about that. The only thing you should worry about is where we were half an hour ago, is what is your truth? What is your story? And if you connect with that and hold it, it's fine. If you want to stick a sticker with shell on your forehead and that's your truth and you own it, fine. Who am I to say any different? It's all about the narrative you're telling to yourself. And if you're truthful to yourself, and that can only come when you love yourself, then it's fine. What other people think of it, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I love what you said about a different truth. I mean, narrative, yes, but there is not just one truth that photographers can express, right? There are many. It is subjective, and therefore there are your own truths.
It's all subjective, but that's what's beautiful. But the stories that last, the work that I would believe or hope to believe, is the one that's closest to the truth.
Yep,
your truth.
Let's round off with something similar to that, and that's the I guess a dilemma, but the responsibility you have as a photographer to represent ethnic groups in a way that is with dignity and is with beauty and allows you to serve them the way you want to serve them. Talk to us about that pressure that you probably put on yourself, but also, you know, feel from others, externalities, and how do you get around that, or how do you do it?
You don't get around it. You jump into the narrative. There's no avoidance. It's a lesser of two evils. This is the way I look at it, and this is the narrative I tell to myself, and whether it's true or not, it's my truth. You ignore them. You don't document them. You don't share them. You don't show them. They will disconnect from their self, their beauty, their respect. They will perceive themselves to be less wealthy. And more often than not, when they're hidden and not celebrated, they will be abused by us. We will exploit the land that they live in and on and with. If you go in and you put them on a pedestal and you say, I'm here to see you, celebrate you, and show you in a particular narrative to the world, and you open the door to their existence, to others and to themselves, it's a different narrative. Now, you change the narrative. You interfere, which is what I do, unintentionally, but it's it's inevitable. Other people follow in your footsteps, having seen the pictures. And I've been back to many of the communities I've worked with over the years, and they literally said, you were, if not the first, one of the first people to ever come and visit us with a camera. As a result, we have many other visitors. But now listen, they say that's a good thing for two reasons. One, because we now earn an income from it. Other people visit and they ask to make a picture. We now charge for that purpose. As a result of that, in many cases, the communities grow. People realign with their culture, their tradition, with the environment that they lived in, and they come back from the urban zone. The other thing is, though, Jimmy, it's changed. We're evolving. It's not the tradition that it was many years ago, and we're applying it. We're maybe even making it more aesthetic, maybe even making it more visual for the picture to earn more money. But if it wasn't for that, they all say unanimously, we wouldn't even be here anymore. So you either open up the door and let us rediscover ourselves, that you perceive us as valuable. There is a wealth in our tradition. And we all end up running around with a smartphone, which is more than 80% of the places I now go to in the world. Even the most remotest corners, there are smartphones there. So they're connected. Or you go like this, oh, don't touch, don't tell, don't relate, don't record, don't photograph. And this will happen. So it's off, either or. That's my opinion. It's a very sort of simplistic way of looking at it. So I'm owning the narrative, owning the story, and owning the discussion. And then that's the bridge to the foundation. The majority of places that I've worked, that I have the opportunity to go back to, we go back and say, how can I help you consolidate your heritage, your traditions, your state of being? How can I enable you to believe and realize that that's value? Don't abandon it like we haven't all become homogenous and disconnect. Stay connected. We need you to stay connected. I use these pictures to tell that story. Let me use some of the income to persuade you to hold on to that. Time will tell. I'll be long gone, and somebody will write something somewhere one day and say, well, I got it totally wrong, or maybe right. And that's the,
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. And I probably kept you way too long again, but it's been even more pleasurable as I get to know you a little bit deeper. And I want to just thank you for taking the time out to represent yourself in a second way to the world, and you've certainly done it justice. So thank you.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you for providing this platform. It's a privilege to have been with you in and on it for the second time. And good luck on your trip.
Thank you so much. Where can we find you? What's coming up? I know you've got some online gallery events, and I know you're traveling soon. And what are we looking out for?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of this project, but I have an immersive exhibition in Carrière des Lumières. Even though I have a French girlfriend, she mocks my accent. It's not very good. In the village Beau-de-Provence, just an hour north of Marseille. It's where I believe the first immersive experience started about 10 years ago. It's from a company called Cultural Spaces. They have Atelier de Lumière in Paris. So it's this sort of massive halls with 150 beamers. So it's in a sort of audiovisual experience. That's for 6 months there, starting in the summer. And I have a traditional framed exhibition in a museum in Barcelona. We haven't got the right date, opening in the autumn. And then here in Amsterdam, there's a gallery. People are welcome to come and visit me here if they'd like. And
if I'm ever there, I'm definitely going to come and visit if you have me.
Welcome, come. Rains a lot, but it's and it's a bit like living in the Truman Show, but they're nice people.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Take care of yourself, and
thank you very much.
Hopefully speak to you again soon.
Thank you for your time and your patience. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.